So I entered the Tourism Awards in 2011, I think it was, and won gold in the Victorian, and went straight through to the States and got a bronze there. Second year won Victorian, then got a silver at the Nationals, and then the third year I was determined to get a gold. And so, and I achieved that and got Hall of Fame. So I've been judging for, this is the third year. I think I did a mentoring session for the very first year, and this is the third year of judging. So I'm just going to give you my background. So as I said, I'm a small business, so you might have to flick that.
Just use the arrows, the right
that
one.
arrows. So I'll go back to me. Oh, I'm not on there. That's all right. So my business was small accommodation, cottages. So Blue Moon Cottages on the Mornington Peninsula. So we entered standard accommodation. I wrote the submission myself. Nobody else contributed, other than I got my husband to proofread it and my staff to proofread it. But I did get a couple of staff to give me some comments about, especially in the training section, on those sorts of elements of how we ran customer service and training and all of those sort of things. So that's my background. As far as the judging is concerned, so there's 30 judges, is it, Mark?
Yes, right.
Panel of 30 judges that you can find on the website. So we basically work in a group. So Michael will allocate judges to particular categories, and we're put in a group of 3. So I may be with 2 other judges, and I may get standard accommodation, and I may get tours and transport, and I may get visitor information services, and possibly get about between 15 and 20 submissions, possibly, for us to actually judge. And we each independently assess your submission. We read it ourselves independently, and then we have a 2-day retreat where we go away and we come together as the group of 3, and we look at the scores that we've given to each of the submissions. So each judge may mark you differently. Some people are harsher markers than others, but generally the process is really quite rigorous, and you end up with generally the best submission is the one that gets the highest marks from every judge, regardless of what that mark is. Where that doesn't happen, and there's some discrepancies, is where we come together and discuss why and how. They may be close to being a finalist but not quite make it. They may be close to being a gold, and somebody else may be close to being a gold, and it's all questionable, very, very, they're really tight marks. So that's what that retreat is really for. It's for us to come through and review, and at that point we can also talk to the site judge. So so along with those submissions that I read and mark, I have another 4 or 5?
Yeah.
4 or 5 site visits that are completely unrelated necessarily to those categories. It's just, I think, random. I don't know how Michael picks them, but I think it's all location based.
Yeah, so obviously judges need to fill out a conflict of interest form, which basically identifies that if they have some interest, with other businesses that might be entering. So I obviously won't get a judge to score those entries or visit those entries. So generally I'll be looking at sending the judges outside of the region that they work in, and that way ensures a very fair process.
Yeah, so we will site visit 4 or 5 different businesses and score those. So when we come together in the judges' retreat, if there is a couple of submissions that are really close, or we want to know whether those should be a finalist or not a finalist, we'll sometimes call in the site judge and ask them their opinion of the business, so that we can get a 4th person in to give us an idea as to whether we're getting the marks correct and reassessing. So that's the way that process works. As Michael said, we sign a confidentiality agreement and a conflict of interest form. So should there be a conflict of interest, and I might have a couple of conflicts of interest this year, I do not get to see that category. Never mind that particular business, but just not that category at all. The first year was a nightmare. I put down loads of people I'd have a conflict of interest with, which caused Michael a complete nightmare, and most of the time I spent sitting outside of the room when the results were shown. So we don't see any of the categories or the business details where we've got a conflict. And yeah, as we said, the judges' profiles are on the website.
Yeah, and it's really useful to actually see who's coming to visit you. So you can actually look at the judges online. We have a bit of a bio, and so you can actually find out a bit about them, where they're from, whether they're an operator like Sian, or whether they might be a bit more of a senior representative in government. We've got a bit of a mixture. What I will say is there's actually around 31 judges plus a chair and an auditor. That panel is actually made up of individuals from all over the state, from across all different sectors. So you may have somebody that's from the Murray region come visit you, who's involved in regional tourism, or might be a previous entrant in wineries, for example. So it's always nice to sort of see who's going to come and get a sense for them before they arrive. And then, you might like to sort of think about, some of the conversation you can have, or some commonalities, which will help, ease the process.
From the judge's perspective, what they're looking for is something that is well written. So content, we were talking before about a story. Remember, the judges have got to read 15, each judge has got to read 15 submissions. So the more interesting that you can make it, the easier to read. And that includes good spelling and grammar. All of those things are important to the overall outcome. So really well written. Measurable goals and outcomes in your business planning section and your marketing section and your risk. Especially, we're looking for goals that are measurable and that we want to see outcomes against those. Even if the outcomes are a negative outcome, it doesn't matter. We just want to see what those outcomes are, and that you are being strategic in your approach to your business, and you're looking at it as a whole, and you're looking and measuring and looking at the outcomes of that. We don't get to see financials, but obviously we need to know from the content that it's financially well managed or viable, but we don't see a profit and loss or a balance sheet at all. As I said before, we're looking for a strategic approach from you as a business, so that we're looking at all of those aspects that you're aware of, that you have a business plan, that you have a marketing plan, that you're thinking on your feet, that you're thinking about innovation and the change. That you're aware of your marketplace, that you're aware of your competition. You may have done a SWOT analysis, you may make mention of that. Who are your competitors? That, as we said, you've demonstrated some sort of flair of innovation, that you're constantly thinking about new things. And they may only be small things, but they may be something, very diverse. So it doesn't matter what it is, as long as we can see that you're thinking, oh look, there's a conference going ahead, or there's going to be some sort of event going on. I want to see if we can get in on that, because it fits our demographic as far as our customers are concerned. As long as we can see you thinking outside of the norm, that's what we're looking for. That you also engage in industry, and that you have the knowledge, that you're members of, whether it's VTIC or a whole range of other associations, and that most of all, and this will come through if it's written well, that there is a passion and enthusiasm about the business that's generated from you. From a small business perspective, it's easier to write as an individual in that way. It's much harder for Sovereign Hill to do that, because they've probably got lots of people that they're drawing off. So small business is great. Single, somebody who's writing their own, it actually shines through. So don't be daunted by that. Have I covered off?
I think so, yeah.
So some of the tips, use testimonials, quotes and evidence. We mentioned that before. So don't make sweeping statements, "Oh, I'm the best at this, you know, we're the best in the region." You need to back that up. Say how that you are. And whether that be from quotes or whether that be from your TripAdvisor reviews, or, you know, a snapshot of where you are on TripAdvisor as the number 2 in the state or whatever. We need to see those. Qualify answers with specific results, as we said before. This is really just all backing up what you're saying. Images that relate to the answer. So, look, you've got 25 images to use, and just make sure that the images enhance the story. So, and that could be, as we said, infographics are things that break up the information that we've got to read. So if we're reading large amounts of text and you want to put an infographic in or a chart, it's much easier for us to read that as well and form part of the whole story. Displaying information in tables. There used to be a restriction on the number of the line spacing and the number of the pages. So I don't think tables really make any difference. The only thing that tables do now is just, it's going to break up large amounts of text again. So think
really
about
it simplifies complex information. So if you want to talk about the overview of your business plan, you can break that down very quickly and easily, and it means that a judge will be able to understand something very complex very easily. So it's usually the business planning, risk assessment, and sometimes in marketing that entrants use tables.
Drafting an answer to a question each week and starting with the difficult ones first. So there is a lot of work. There is a number of hours, lots of hours of work. But as I said to you before, if you think about it as working on your business rather than working on a submission, but you do need to allocate time to it. Maybe one day a week that you literally just go and look, I'm not doing anything other than this. But you do need to spend a structured amount of time, and you know, you've got until the 4th of September, so you may. Do they do mocks anymore? No. Okay. So you know, break it down. How many questions have I got? How many parts to each question? You might have four parts in question 1. You might just do part 1A today. You know, in 3 days' time, you might want to do part B. So just see if you can break it down. Start with the difficult ones first. I don't know, it depends on how you are. What's the most difficult? The business plan is the skeleton of the document. It's where you show your complete, you know, overview of how you approach your business, from your finance and your marketing, your human resources, you know, your sustainability. That all sort of links through the whole thing. I started with question 1 because I found that I needed to write the story and get down my core values of the business first, because that stepped me through the rest. Other people start with question 2, which is the business plan, and that's the skeleton of the document. But whatever you think that you feel most comfortable with, you can start with that. Tips and scores are included in the questions, so there's some really good tips about how to write the answers to the questions. So make sure that you do download that
What I will say as well, just make sure you do read the questions and break the questions up, because there's a couple of questions that may be double-barreled or triple-barreled. So you might feel like you've answered the question, but actually you've only answered the first part of the question. So just make sure you read the questions carefully, that you've answered every part of the question.
Yeah. Yeah, so as I said before, you know, try and framework this over time, because if you don't, you'll end up with all that whole, you know, rushing at the last minute. And what tends to happen is question 5 is the sustainability question, probably one of the hardest questions if you're not in that sustainability area, and you end up with, you know, a short, brief overview of what you can think of in the time that you've got left, and it doesn't do that question justice. So yeah, just try and organise your time really well.
Comments, but yeah.
Yeah, is that it?
Yep.
No, oh, site judging. So, so as far as the site judge is concerned, what we're there for is to evidence what you've written about. So if you said, I've got a marketing plan, I've got a business plan, I've got an award from TripAdvisor or whatever it was, anything that you mention, that's what we're looking for. We're looking to come and see that you're in business, to see the business, for you to show us around and explain how you work, and to actually back up everything that you've written. So we will read the submission and we will look at all of the things that you've written, and we'll be looking and asking you questions and looking for evidence that you have everything you said you had. So it's a 90 minutes, a 90-minute visit. So you might get everything out that is evidence that's put into your submission, and you have the opportunity to talk to the judge, and they will talk to you about your business, and you can ask them any questions even if it's not related. I'd have to go and throw to Michael on that, because I don't know as far as the admin's
If you're
concerned.
entering Visitor Information Centre services, it would only be the centre. So obviously, if there would be a management team for that, you could certainly bring them into the picture, but they wouldn't need to see the organics of the other areas of the business, because
you're talking about two submissions. So if there was a visitor centre and destination marketing, would they get 2 site visits?
yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Because the judges could be different.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep, yep. For each category you enter, you get a site visit.
Okay, so as we said, so we were meeting the entrant and answering any of your questions, of verifying what's detailed in the entry, and personally experiencing and getting a sense of your business or tour or whatever it is. We were talking about this morning, but you know, if you're on, we had somebody in the other group that we were working with who was on who did some walking tours. If the walking tour fitted within that 90-minute framework, you could go and take them on a walking tour, take the judge on a walking tour and show them around and talk about things at the same time, as long as you had enough time to show them evidence and answer any of their questions. But obviously, if it doesn't fit within that framework, you can't do that. You'll have to just describe and show people around as best you can. If you've got staff, then the judge would like to meet staff and maybe even talk to the staff.
But you can also do a tour of your business, like if you're an accommodation operator, you might like to show them a room, show them how the room's set up, what are the facilities, or if you've just got your service or your experience is off-site, but you're at the administration hub of where you operate from, give them the tour of that facility as well. There's no problem with that. Yep.
If you're an accommodation provider, because I've come from that background, we treated the site judge like a guest who was going to come and visit. So when they booked a time to come and meet and talk, we actually sent out a booking confirmation to them to say yes, that you were coming to this particular cottage at this particular time, and gave them all the information that we would give a normal guest. So the site visits are to be led by you, the operator, not the judge. So the judge will turn up and expect a tour and conversation and a chat. They won't say necessarily, I want to see this and I want to see this and I want to see this. It's up to you to showcase your product, your business, and guide them around. That's what they're ideally looking for. So, and as we said, they'll be asking for your policies, to have a look at anything that you've referenced in your document, really.
Oh, can I add one thing to that we talked about, is that we can't give them a gift.
Yeah, you can give them a cup of tea.
No sort of accommodation vouchers or bottles of wine, as tempting as it is, you can't give them any.
Yeah,
So
and an accommodation provider can't stay at your accommodation either. I'm correct in saying.
Right.
So you can't invite them to stay. When you're an accommodation provider, you can show them the rooms, but you can't invite them to stay. And I think the same would go for restaurants and catering.
Yeah.
They're not to eat.
If you're a brewery or you're a restaurant, there would be no harm in actually giving them a taste of something, but they wouldn't have a sit-down meal, for example. So, just an element of what you're offering is fine, but not the full-blown experience. we've had helicopter guys wanting to take our judges for helicopter rides and things like that. So yeah, we've just got to draw the line. So and generally I task our judges to do a region collectively, so they generally will do 2 or 3 site visits in a day, or 6 maybe if they've got a bigger region over, and they'll stay overnight. So they are on a tight schedule, and they can't really go over that 90 minutes. Great. Well, fine.
Can I just ask a question?
Absolutely.
What do you, in your opinion, differentiated, or what were the points of difference between your first entry and your third entry?
For us, so
was
the
it
judge.
more results based, or was it content based in terms of what you submitted?
It was content based.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm coming from a no marketing background. Small business, dive in to do something that you end up, well, you don't even, you dive in not even with that idea.
Yeah.
So from the marketing perspective, it was marketing for me that was a little light on.
Yeah.
And so I specifically requested a mentor that was strong in the marketing section. So that's, and that's brilliant for a small business. I mean, it's free.
Yeah.
I've got somebody coming in saying, well, look at it this way. I mean, they're just reviewing what you're doing. They're not answering the whole question. They're reviewing stuff. So it was a marketing section, but it was really just taking every little bit of the judges' feedback every year and adding that and thinking, oh, okay. And the one thing I think, this is a personal opinion, but the one thing that I know that the judges are looking for, they're looking really very strongly at innovation. They like to see, people are looking ahead. That shows that you're always on the go and you're always at the forefront of what's going on. So we had in the last one, I had an innovation section, and at that time the word innovation had actually been taken out of the submissions. But I had this little innovation section in every single answer. It was just boxed. It was just a box which had innovation in it. So they're looking for that, and they're looking for the diversity and sort of bringing other things in that are associated with your business. Might not be specific to, for accommodation, but it may be an ancillary thing that you do that's really important. So just think about everything. Think about everything you do. The lady that's saying, well, we don't do anything because, it's just us, we're the family. You're surprised at what you do. And it's not until you actually put it down on paper that you realise that you're a great operator, but you just haven't put it down on paper, and you just haven't had anybody acknowledge that, and that's what this is for.
Can I get some clarity around, you're talking about innovation and looking ahead, but the actual reporting periods for the last 12 months, so I'm just curious to know how you...
We were talking about that before. I think it's if the innovation has started, even in the planning stages and those infant stages this year, you can mention that, but you have to be very clear that is a plan going forward, and that you started it this year, but when you come to your business plan or the marketing plan or whatever it is, you've got to show the outcome as we have no result yet. Okay. So when you're writing your submission, you need to make sure you thread everything through. So a judge will very clearly see a disjointed submission. I've just answered that bit and I've just answered that bit. It's got to thread through. So if you're talking about that bit of innovation in the business plan, it should be seen in the marketing plan, and it might be seen somewhere else in a sustainability area or somewhere. So the judges are not silly. They'll look at something and they'll read it and they'll go, this doesn't make sense. You're saying that and then you're saying this and you're saying this. Nothing's cohesive. So really think about you and your mission statement and your core values and what your business is all about, because that will be the strength and the backbone of what you write.
Sian, so we only opened in March, so we're very new.
Yep.
So innovatively, I suppose, maybe coming down the track, we're thinking of maybe doing like pamper packages for weekends and getting like an on-board woman to come in and do things so that you can have a girls' weekend and have luxury things. But we haven't got that on board. It's just a brain thing going at the moment. So we just need to incorporate that into the package?
I haven't judged new business, so I don't know what the questions are in new business.
Yeah,
So maybe
well, that would only apply this year if you were to enter this year, because if you enter this year, you could only enter new tourism business category. So that category is not won't ask you questions about innovations so much. It won't ask you to report on milestones or achievements so much. It's asking more about you setting up the business and what your plans are for the future. And if you go through that process this year, it will give you a really great grounding for next year. And then when you choose the category that you want to be recognised for, you can actually go, since we started operating, we've now incorporated these pamper packages, or our plans are to develop these pamper packages, and we're researching providers, what the inclusions are, with the foresight to launch them in December or next year or something like that. So
what you might want to do is just have a look at the questions in new business
Yep.
and the breakdown of the notes for that, and see what you can and can't include and whether you think you've got enough to put a submission forward.
The other thing is that sometimes you get some businesses that do so much that just that's something that they're planning this year. So look, just leave that. You've already got 4 other things you've done.
save it for next year.
Just leave that. We'll need something for next year's submission, and so let's talk about next year when it's actually.
Yeah, when I'm talking about innovation, I'm talking about the cream on top of the basics. So there's a lot of basics to go into that submission, and that innovation sort of, just all the frilly bits. It's not, but it's that little extra bit of level of detail. So you'll have enough to write even just on your new setup.
Great. Yep, have you got the clicker there? Yep. Thank you. So we've come to an end. Just before we do open up for any final questions, just want to remind entrants that do want to enter this year that the gala ceremony the date has been set for the 23rd of November, and it's at Crown, and it's a great night of entertainment. We usually have a personality who acts as MC. Last year it was Tommy Little. We've had Tim Campbell. We're finalising that at the moment. But as you can see, last year we had Circus Oz doing a performance for our naming rights partner RACV, and in this situation obviously she's wearing his clothes and he's wearing her clothes, and that didn't start off like that, so go figure. But you would have seen that happen right in front of your eyes, and that was a message that RACV do go to any lengths to service their members. So just put that in your diary if you decide to enter. We'd love to see you there. Tickets will be on sale hopefully in July. And as Sian mentioned, we VTIC offers a mentor service for past entrants, but for first-time entrants there's a project officer support, which is Joe here today. So if you want to access that, please speak to Joe, or if you'd like to get a mentor if you're a past entrant, please come and speak to me. And keep an eye on the awards website, and I do a newsletter which you can subscribe to from the awards website. Generally I'll put your email from this workshop on that list. If it's something you don't want to receive, you can just opt out of that. Finally, any questions? But also thanks to our partners, particularly RACV. Without the support of RACV, the program couldn't run, but we have another range of partners that contribute in some shape or form. Bright Brewery, for example, provide our beer at the awards, as does Pizzini with the wine. William Angus provide us lunches for the judges. A whole range of different partners contribute to this program. It's a year-long program, from getting you guys on board through mentoring, through judging, and then putting the gala ceremony together. So a lot of people are involved, a lot of industry are involved, regional tourism bodies, so thanks to them. And thanks to you. I appreciate your time, and I'm happy, or I'm sure Sian's happy to answer any questions if you've got any. We do have some morning tea here. Please stay and network, and you are welcome to tour Sovereign Hill if you've got time. For myself, I've never been here, so I'm itching to see this award-winning product. So thank you. Thank you.